Hello and welcome to That Shooting Show. My name's Steve Anderson. I am your humble host. Want to thank our partners first. As you know, Walther is the title sponsor of the program here, and I continue to be impressed with the PDP. The only issue that I've got right now is that a ghost has stolen my last Walther. Well, let me just back that up a little bit. Jay Beal stole one of my two remaining Walther hats. He very famously did not want the used one that has all of my brain power secreted in DNA. He for whatever reason, he didn't want that one, so I gave him my brand new one. And then a ghost has stolen my remaining Walther hat at the Double Eagle Pocono guest resort range haunted mansion. What would it be called? Auxiliary building. So I'm down to 0 Walther hats, but Chris from Walther assures me I've got more Walther hats on the way. And we need to let you know that the PDP is the only 30-day money-back guarantee in the industry. And those of you that are having troubles with your mechanic, don't panic. Don't call the mechanic. Get a Walther. I'm just saying, We don't see posts, hey, I just got a Walther and it doesn't work, but we have seen some panicked mechanics having a little bit of trouble with the mechanics. And I'm just saying, the Walther gets it right. Mine is 100% malfunction free. That's the PDP with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Go check it out. And of course, as you know, Targets USA manufactures the finest steel targetry on the planet. Those of you that are YouTubing can see my Targets USA Holy Monkey cup. If you've never faced the Holy Monkey, it is a devious little moving target. It's actually not that hard. Presentations, I believe it's 2 and 4 are pretty simple. The first one's pretty erratic. The second one's pretty stable. 3 and 4 are kind of weird. And then I think number 5 is the other easy one. So that second presentation on that Holy Monkey is pretty simple if you ever see that one. And of course, as you know, CR Speed manufactures the finest gun handling gadgetry you can wrap around your waist. The AMG-lab.com Commanderson timer continues to turn heads and blow minds by putting the time right into the tablet. We had a couple of instances yesterday where people were we were doing our monthly insider consults, and the guy's like, okay, I went to this match. Here's me. Here's the other guy. We could go right into Practice Score Competitor, and we could pull up every event. And if the dude knew the stage, we could look at every single event. Okay, you fired your first shot at 209. What's happening? Well, we had a gun pickup. Okay, well, the other guy fired his first shot at 178. And then the next event is a 30. What's that? Okay, that's a split to a far target. Well, the other guy did it in 25. And if you know the stage, and if you have video, and if they're using the AMG-lab.com Commanderson timer, you can go in and see every event, and you can see exactly what somebody is doing earlier than you are to get to the stage sooner than you are. And of course, Hunter's HD Gold is the only eyewear that I wear. I had, as usual, a blast hanging out with Brian Conley at the Scholastic Action Shooting Program, Nationals in Marengo, Ohio. Looks like I'm going to be back there Friday afternoon. So if anybody's listening to this program, you want to see me Friday afternoon. I've got a mental management class in the morning. I should be out there by 1 o'clock or so. That's what I'm thinking. So like 1 to 4 out there at the SASP. It's exasperating trying to get it right. At the Scholastic Action Shooting Program Nationals. We were there yesterday and was able to help several shooters have better rounds. So this is a Steel Challenge type match. And Steel Challenge and IDPA are the easiest two sports, simplest two sports in which to apply mental management very, very quickly. When you're shooting any kind of Steel Challenge, as SASP is, you got one job. And that job is to see what you need to see for every shot you fire. Some of these kids are prone to the squirrel. The squirrel says, pull the trigger. And we're not going to do the squirrel voice because it'll get the dogs hyper. We tried that last time. We got armpits full of dogs. So we're not going to do the squirrel voice. But the squirrel is very real. And the squirrel wants you to pull the trigger without seeing what you need to see. Your job is to control the squirrel. We had a young shooter named Jesse yesterday. Had a little bit of trouble on a stage. Understandably emotional, totally get that. But what we got to do is we got to identify the solution. And the solution is to control the squirrel. Put the duct tape over the squirrel's mouth so he can't tell you to pull the trigger when the side picture is not appropriate. It's not going to feel very fast, but it's going to score much, much, much better. And let's see, we got Targets USA, CR Speed, AMG-lab.com, Anderson Timer, Hunter's HD Gold, OutdoorDynamics.net, as you know, remanufactures the finest competition ammunition you can dispense from a Freedom Seed dispenser. And, of course, ShootingSportsInnovations.com is a lot to type because there's a lot to see when you go there. Check it out. And if anybody's listening that I met at the SASP, guys, dry fire. If there's a time you need on one of those stages, set it up in dry fire or some approximation of it. Figure out what it feels like, because there's no second shot on these plates. Dry fire is very realistic. Had a great time meeting a couple of coaches there. I remember meeting Bill and talking to Bill. I don't remember Bill's last name. The irony was he looks and resembles Bill Dolan. So as I'm talking to him, so Bill Dolan, if you're listening to the program, you've got a SASP coach doppelganger out there who looks quite a bit like you and has some of your same mannerisms. Even grew a ponytail to work at Disney. But the one thing that I did hear from a couple of coaches that I want to point out, if you're coaching a shooter during a match, the last thing, and I mean the last thing you want them thinking about is what they just did wrong. They know what they did wrong, and you reminding them of it is not helpful. What you need to be doing is referencing what was happening when they were getting it right. Hey, 2 of those strings were awesome. What was happening when you were getting it right? That was the question I asked them. What was happening when you got it right? While I was relaxed and just put the dot in the middle of the target. Are you telling me in your teenage years of wisdom that you got your best runs by relaxing and put the dot in the middle of the target? Yes, that's what happened. And the other curious thing I noticed was every single shooter that I observed had a great first run. Every single one. I'm remembering that roughly 100% of those shooters had 5 for 5 on their first run. But then the squirrel wakes up and goes, that was too easy. That was too controlled. You can go faster. And then we have some issues. And then typically on string 5, they get it back together. And the smart coaches were saying, hey, go back to what was working. Go back to what was working. And the biggest mistake people make in the middle game is they become experts in what's happening when they're not getting it right. You don't need to be an expert in what happens when you're not getting it right. And that's the problem, by the way, is that you're an expert in what's happening when you're not getting it right. What you need to do is flip that around so you're an expert in what's happening when you're getting it right. That's what you need to know about. What mental conditions exist when I'm getting it right? That's what you need to know about. All right, we got some classes coming up I want to tell you about. October 27th and 29th at the beautiful 17 South Range in Georgia. The only problem with Georgia is those ridiculous trucks that are jacked up in the front. We're trying to get those banned. I don't think we're going to have much luck, but we'll try. Bluegrass, Kentucky, at the Bluegrass Sportsman's League, September 23 and 24. Deerfield, Massachusetts, August 4 and 5. That one's coming up. Salem, New Jersey, we just added September 8, 9, and 10. I love that format because we get to do a class, a match, and then a class. That is my absolute favorite format. And if anybody out there is wanting to do a class, that is my absolute favorite. Class on Friday, match on Saturday, class on Sunday. On the first day, we'll talk about match mode, accuracy, shot calling, controlling the squirrel, basically. And then we'll shoot the match. And then when the match is over, we'll look at opportunities to get better at some of those technical elements. We don't do a lot of technical stuff before the class because that's not smart. We're going to be in South Africa, second part of August. I think that's 12 through 26, something along those lines. If you're in South Africa, you want to get in on that, get a hold of Shanae, and she can tell you where we're going to be. And if you've been wanting to do mental management, we have 2 mental management opportunities coming up. July 19 through 21 at 9 a.m. That's coming up next week. 2 hours a day via the Zoom. And if you want the 5 p.m. slot, that'll be July 31st through August the 2nd at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Okay, and when you sign up for that, you'll get a Zoom link about 15 minutes prior to the start of the class. You can always tell who the eager beavers are because they'll send me a message like 12 hours ahead of time. I don't have the link, don't have the link, don't have the link. That's because class doesn't start for 12 hours. I need the link, I need the link, I need the link. Class doesn't start for 12 hours. I need the link, I need the link, I need the link. Class doesn't start for 12 hours. So if you send me an email 12 hours prior to the start of class, you don't have the link. I mean, unless you're waiting for your dial-up modem, unless it takes 12 hours to connect, with the screen, scrong. You young kids don't even remember that. Probably if you're under, I guess if you're under 30, you might not remember those days of dial-up modem noises, but it was a real struggle. It was the sound of dying robots bringing you the internet. But if you want to do mental management, those are the times. If you need some other time, you just let me know. Send me an email, steve@andersonshooting.com. All right, so we have a letter. The letter's very simple. And the letter goes like this. I'll pull it up right quick. Letter says, can you discuss levels of participation and how they do or do not translate to classification? Well, level of participation is your involvement in the sport. And Lanny Basham identified, I think, 4. I might not get them all right, but I'll for sure give you the gist. Number 1, the first level of participation is I'm learning the sport. I'm new to the sport. I'm learning the sport. That's the first level of participation. Number 2, I'm training to compete. I know the sport, and now I'm training to be more competitive. Number 3 is I'm training to win, whatever level, local level, regional level, national level, I'm training to win. And then number 4 is I'm training to dominate the sport or take the sport to a new place. There's a few of you that are in that 4th category, training to take the sport to a new level, and congratulations. Most of you are probably going to be in level 3. I'm training to be more competitive. But the way they translate into classification, you could look at it 2 ways. The training that you're doing will ultimately result in a higher classification, or you can train specifically for a higher classification. Those 2 types of training might be a little different. Training to be competitive in the sport is going to have a lot more to do with the non-shooting stuff. Reducing the time spent not shooting is the only way to get a higher hit factor. Your job in stage planning, shooting, training is to reduce the time spent not shooting. It's as simple as that. And then training for a higher classification level is going to have a little bit more standing still, a little bit more draws, a little bit more reloads. And yes, the classifications are changing. The classifiers are changing. They're becoming more reflective of the actual sport. And I highly, highly endorse that. So we're probably down now, I would say, just picking a number, 70% stand and shoots, 30% moving. But that's not truly indicative because the stand and shoots are usually more likely to get set up because they're much easier to set up, much easier to measure, and all the rest of it. So even though we're having more classifiers with movement in them, I would suspect that we're still seeing a larger number of stand and shoots. And I'll say this numerous times throughout today's program. If you want to get better in your classification, become a great one-handed shooter. And if you're trying to get into the national or world level, be an expert, right? One of the things that I've been telling people is it's a whole lot easier to be the best one-handed shooter in your zip code, state, area, region, country. It's a whole lot easier to be the best one-handed shooter than it is to be the best shooter. So let's do that first. Well, it only represents 10% of the stages. Well, maybe not. Maybe not. And the standard just changed again. The standard used to be 15 yards strong hand, about 10 yards support hand. Well, we saw a 25-yard strong hand shot nobody was expecting. Nobody was expecting that to be at 25 yards. Some people could do it, some people couldn't do it. You need to be one of the ones that can do it. And the one-handed classifiers are criminally easy to move up on because nobody practices them but my people. Strong hand, weak hand stages are a great opportunity to show SHO, strong hand only, them who, WHO, weak hand only, has been practicing. So become the best one-handed shooter in your area, and that will dramatically increase your classifications. So in 2003, I wrote a book. And you YouTubers can see the book. It is, of course, Refinement and Repetition, also known as Steve Anderson's dry fire book, also known as Steve Anderson's first book. The real title is Refinement and Repetition. And what happened was I was the first Grandmaster in Ohio. That happened 2002, probably 2003, early. I was the first Grandmaster in Ohio, and everybody kept asking me, how did you do it? At that time, there was no YouTube. The internet was brand new, and there wasn't a whole lot of information on there. And the only reason I wrote this book was because I got tired of giving the drills away for free. And I thought, well, if there's this much interest, maybe I can sell a handful of these books and help pay for bullets. That was my thinking. And I was very nervous writing the book because I wasn't 100% sure I knew what I was talking about. My biggest fear was somebody who, quote unquote, knew what they were doing would get a hold of this book and rip it to shreds. Well, that didn't happen. That's happened a couple of times, but not from people who knew what they were doing more than I did, from people who don't understand what we're trying to accomplish. We'll come back to that in a minute. But I had 12 drills. I had them on one piece of paper, and I did them every day. And I did them for hours upon hours. And the only thing I did was I took the most common elements in the classifiers that I saw and turned them into dry fire drills. My thinking was, if I can do 6 reload 6 quickly and accurately on anything, steel, paper, partials, whatever it is, I could be a Grandmaster. And it worked. It absolutely worked. So we are in the process of updating the book. And that's a slow process. Editing a book takes a lot longer than writing one because you really got to go through there and look at everything. Is this still what I think? Is this still true? Is this still valid? The good news is there's not a whole lot of changing to be done to that book, but the most important change is the one I want to talk about first. When you get your book, Refinement Repetition, you'll see that it says, this is drill 1, 10 in slow motion without the timer, 10 with no par time, 10 at 0.2 over baseline, 10 at 0.1 over baseline, 10 at baseline, and 10 at 0.1 under baseline. Okay. So that's fine, and there's nothing really wrong with that, but there's a better way to do it. What I want you to do now is 3 to 5 minutes at or below your current par time. How do I establish my par time? Well, every shot timer that I'm aware of has a par time function. And the first drill is a drill to an acceptable sight picture at 15 feet. And just take a guess. How long is that going to take me? 1.5 seconds. Okay, put 1.5 seconds on your par time. Do the exercise. If you have an acceptable sight picture before the second par tone, you've beat that par time, reduce it a little bit. Most of you that are starting this, if you're using a standard holster, will be in the 1.3 to 1.5 range to start with. Just, broadly generalizing. Your goal is to get that down to 0.6. And it's very important on this first drill that you understand that you're drawing to an acceptable sight picture with your finger on the trigger. Do not attempt to beat the par time by pressing the trigger. If you want to do a little bit of that, people are so excited. Oh, the AMG-lab.com commander's time picks up the click and dry fire. Yes, it does. But that is extremely dangerous. If you spend too much time pressing the trigger to beat the par time, you're training yourself to pull the trigger in 0.6 of a second. My preference would be that you train yourself to see an acceptable sight picture in 0.6 of a second with your finger on the trigger. The reason that's so important is a couple things. Number one, you must absolutely have the trigger finger discipline to be on that trigger without dropping the hammer. Okay, the sight picture may be wonky. If you're in a self-defense situation, you may not have decided to shoot yet. So we need to be on that trigger without dropping the hammer. That's very, very important. If you want to do a little bit of isolated trigger pulls, just to get the real, some people need the feedback from the timer. Some people need that third-party verification. I get it. Just don't do too much of that, because you're not teaching yourself to pull the trigger in 0.6 of a second. You're teaching yourself to get an acceptable sight picture in 0.6 of a second. That's absolutely critical that you understand that. Very, 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 very important. Okay, so let's just go look at drill number 1 here. Standing in box A, hands naturally at sides. You could do wrist below belt. Wrist below belt is the trending start position, but there will be times the RO will want your hands naturally at sides or hands relaxed at sides. I don't know what that means, but it's not the same thing as wrist below belt. right? And if the RO doesn't like your start position, simply say, what would you like me to do? Do not, I repeat, do not ever, ever argue with the RO. You will see these people over and over and over again. And if you're known as the guy that argues with them and they see you coming and they expect an argument, they are waiting, literally waiting for you to do anything that they can penalize you or DQ you for. This isn't universally true. Some ROs might not do that, but they are human beings. And if you come off as abrasive and argumentative over and over and over again, they begin to expect that. They are not likely to make a call in your favor if there's a questionable call. Okay? All right, draw an established acceptable sight picture lower A zone of T1 with the finger on the trigger. Do not pull the trigger. And lower A zone, of course, means the body A zone. It does not mean the lower part of the lower A zone. I've had more than one person say, wow, you told me to aim low because you said lower A zone. Well, that's not really what I meant. What I meant was the lower A zone, the body A zone as opposed to the head A zone. And of course, if you're doing the IDPA, you'll be on the down zero, piece of cake. And you just want to lower that par time, right? And lowering your par time is all about examining everything that is happening in the exercise and picking one thing to do sooner. So in this case, you've got hands naturally at sides. The first opportunity is the reaction time. Are you starting to move at the beginning of the start tone or the middle or the end? And slow motion video is a great way to tell, because in slow motion video, that start tone turns into a foghorn, and you want your hands moving before the end of that foghorn. And my buddy Drew Maruski in Pennsylvania thinks he can hear the click of the, well, this wouldn't apply because you're using a random start, but it's still interesting to talk about. So Drew Maruski thinks he can hear the click of the AMG-lab.com Commanderson timer when somebody's running him, so he tries to go on the click. I don't know if he can hear it or not, but if he's listening for the click, and he swears he can, by the way, but if he's listening for the click, I promise you he's going for the very beginning of the start tone. Now, since we're talking about the draw, I am not a huge fan of the scoop draw. Yes, the scoop draw is probably marginally quicker than whatever I would call mine, but I have yet to see a shooter with 100% consistency on a scoop draw. I've not seen it. Every time I get somebody in class that has a scoop draw, we eventually see them pull up a big old ham sandwich and pretzels. And they say, oh, I missed my grip. Well, that's because on a true scoop draw, your thumb's not doing a whole lot. And so what happens to that thumb after you get the gun out of the holster, particularly if you're hustling, can be questionable. I just simply grab the gun on the way up. All right, my hand gets on the gun. The primary difference is my thumb is in more or less the correct spot as the gun comes out of the holster. You definitely want to avoid pushing down on the gun. There's no reason to push down on it. Well, I like to establish my grip. Well, that's fine, but pushing down on the holster takes time. It's going to take you some amount of time to push down on that holster, and it's not necessary. I literally just grab the gun on the way up. Strong hand is already probably 95% in its correct grip, maybe more than that. But you've got so many things you can do sooner. Reaction time sooner, hand to the gun sooner, gun out of the holster sooner, support hand on the gun sooner, gun from where the support hand joins to the end of the draw stroke sooner. If you just try to go faster, you will tense up, you will miss your grip. If you pick something very strategically to do sooner, that'll go a whole lot better than just trying to throw speed at it. You definitely want to have your, so I'm right-handed, so we'll talk about a right hand. What I like to do is set my right shoulder with my hand on my gun. You YouTubers can see my shoulder is now slightly up because I've got my hand on my gun. The point there is your shoulder is here at your start position. What needs to be here to get the gun. So I try to start there. Okay? You see it doesn't need to be all the way up here. It just needs to be up a little bit. That's an easy hack. And then you for sure want to find a spot for your forearm to touch some part of the gun or the mag so that your hand's in the exact same place every time. Okay, so those are the big tweaks there. Should be very easy to get that down under a second very, very quickly, and then just keep going. Now, you will, let's say you're at 1-2, you're trying to get to 0.9, 0.8, 0.7, you will miss your grip during that process. So you got a choice to make. You can either stop for the purposes of a perfect grip, or you can work through it. That grip usually comes back in about 10 reps. And the reason we want you to do it for 3 to 5 minutes instead of counting reps is you'll do more reps and you'll be less likely to analyze or criticize those reps. You don't need to be analyzing or criticizing every rep. You just need to do another one. Obviously, if something undesirable is happening every single time, you may want to take a second and figure out what's happening. But a random aberration is no reason to stop the repetition. It's just do another one. I remember I did a dry fire tune-up online with a guy. He did a rep and then he wanted to discuss it for 10 minutes. I'm like, can we just do another one? Wow, I missed my grip. I had a problem over here. Had a problem over there. Did this thing. Well, hey, can we just do another one? Can we just do it again? Just do it again. Just do it again. Because all of those criticisms and all those evaluations go right into your self-image, and they become things that are normal. And if you just do it again, there's an excellent chance you won't have that problem or whatever the problem was. However, if you analyze the problem, repeat the problem, state the problem, think about the problem, picture the problem, over time it becomes normal to have that problem. It's not what you want, but it is what you expect. And that will tend to happen. Right? I had a great conversation with a young man yesterday. The SASP, one of the stages has a penalty plate right in the middle of it. So there's one on the left, one on the right, and then there's a big refrigerator penalty plate in the middle with 2 little peekaboo plates behind it, and then the stop plate is right in front of the penalty plate. And the guy gets done and he goes, I've noticed that I can't shoot this stage well. So I noticed I don't shoot this stage well because I can't lean far enough and I'm not patient enough. And I borrowed a pad and a paper and I said, these are your thoughts about this stage. Can't, won't, don't. Didn't, can't, won't. So the sum total of his thinking about this stage, didn't, can't, won't. And it was just a fascinating lesson in self-image because right away we said, okay, let's change these thoughts. Can, will, do. I can get a better lean. I will have the right amount of visual patience, and I do lean enough to see the little peekaboo plates. Now, those thoughts need to be repeated to take hold, but can, do, did, will is a whole lot better than can't, won't, didn't, couldn't, shouldn't, can't, didn't, not. And again, don't ever tell yourself in training or competition what not to do. Always tell yourself in training or competition what to do. Because whatever you're thinking about creates a picture in your head. That picture is very likely to be your immediate future. All right, so drill 1, simple draw to an acceptable set picture, close distance. Drill 2 is the same thing at a slightly further distance. In this case, it's 30 feet. Those two should be about the same. I'm 0.6 at all these presentation drills, had been for years. So work those things down to 0.6. Okay? All right, the next one is the surrender start position, wrists above shoulders. And a couple things that are really important here is if you get your elbow behind the gun, okay, YouTubers can see the elbow behind the gun. You'll feel some tension right here on your KISS t-shirt, on the K of your KISS t-shirt when you get it right. If you get your elbow behind the gun in the start position, you will not hit the beaver tail with most holster positions. I like the holster right on my hip bone, straight up and down. That's the best compromise for everything. And it also has a turn and draw benefit, which we'll get to here in a minute. But holster straight up and down, right on the hip bone, is the best place for that holster and the best orientation for it. And if you get your elbow behind the gun and your hands in the exact same place every time, right? I like to use my ears and my nose because I've always got them. So the right thumb goes on the ear, the left thumb goes right in front of the nose, and my hands are in the exact same place every single time with the elbow behind the gun. You do those things and you will have a great surrender draw every single time. What gets a lot of people into trouble is if they're bringing their right hand forward as part of surrender draw, they have to dodge the beaver tail, and it makes them very cautious and careful. But if you get the elbow behind the gun, you can just go straight down to the gun with no worries of hitting the beaver tail. Now, the first couple of times you do that, you will grip the gun low. and that is by design. That is the opposite of hitting the beaver tail, and that's working great. Okay, so hands in the exact same place every single time, elbow behind the gun for the wrist above shoulder start position. And again, having a straight line from the start position to the gun makes it very, very aggressive. All right, turn and draw. I can't show you this right now because the camera's not set up for it. There are numerous videos on the website that show the turn and draw. Basically, what you're going to do for a right-handed shooter is start at the top right corner of the box with your feet really close together. Top right corner of the box with your feet close together. And then you're going to do three things. You're going to kick out your left heel. Okay, so your left foot's going to do this. Okay. You're going to take a step toward the target as you turn around while you're drawing the gun, and then you're going to relax your left foot. Those are the only three things that you need to do. What slows people down is they want to bring what would it be? What would bring the left foot forward after the right foot comes down? You don't need to do that. You're literally going to start in the top right corner of the box for a right-handed shooter, kick out your left foot, take one step toward the target as you draw the gun, and then relax your left foot if you need to. Now, if you think of the box as a clock, the back of the box is 6 and the front of the box is 12. You're going to want to come down at about 2 or 3. If you come down at 9 or 10, you're going to be very unstable. And if you do this and you experience instability, you're not coming around far enough. You'll need to come around a little bit further. And the easiest way to think of this is if you're facing away from something and you want to walk towards something that's behind you, what would your first step look like? That's pretty much the turn and draw. Okay, and you insiders can go see turn and draw videos, and I could probably, in fact, I will post one today. There's a couple easy ones I can post that demonstrate it very easily, so I'll get those posted today on the old social medias. Point 6, not a problem. Okay, strong hand index. On the strong hand, what's really important is you want to finish for a right-handed shooter with your right foot in front. So you should either start with your right foot slightly in front or drag your left foot back on the strong hand only presentation. The only reason I started dragging my left foot back was because when I started using a race holsters don't like to let go at an angle. They like to let go straight ahead. And so what I learned was if I started with my right foot forward, the race holster didn't want to let go because of the angle. But if I started with my left foot forward and dragged the left foot back, that let the race holster let go nice and clean. With a standard holster, it's probably not as much of an issue. Starting with the right foot forward is probably a little better because you're moving less. However, some people report better dot acquisition starting with the left foot forward in a more normal stance. This is for right-handed shooters, obviously. But some people report better dot acquisition one-handed if they start in their normal stance and then adjust it by bringing the left foot back. What you don't want to do is step forward with the right foot as you draw, because as that foot comes down, it can bounce your sight picture. And if you have trouble finding the dot, the solution is dry fire, dry fire, dry fire, dry fire. Say it with me, dry fire, dry fire, dry fire. Anybody who says they have trouble finding the dot, what they're really saying is, I don't dry fire. Those two sentences are the same. All right, if I was to teach somebody English and we got to, I'm having trouble finding my dot, the exact translation is, I don't dry fire. And I don't care if it takes you 3 minutes to find it. Do not ever holster the gun having not found your dot. Don't ever do it. It's just don't do it. Just find the dot. Muscle memory is not the right term, but that's an easy enough term to use what's happening. If you find the dot every single time, body and brain will learn what needs to happen to put the dot in the window right in front of you, and that'll happen every time. But it'll only happen with refinement and repetition. All right, number 8. Weak hand index. Here you're going to draw the gun and transfer it to the support hand. The easiest way to do this is to draw the gun normally, and then as soon as the gun clears the holster, move your thumb and this part of your hand out of the way. I don't have a gun here in front of me, so I can't show you. I can show you with my phone. Draw the gun normally. As soon as the gun clears the holster, do this. Okay? And this will allow you space to put that left hand and take the gun away. So normal draw, normal draw, and then wherever the support hand would normally join the gun, you just want your this and this, whatever this is called. This I don't know what that's called. Your right thumb, whatever that is. Somebody's yelling at the radio. It's called a Seeklander. I don't know what it's called. Whatever this meat is here below your thumb, you want that out of the way. Okay, so draw the gun, pull that out of the way. It's easy place to put that in there. And you want that to happen where the support hand would normally join the gun. So on a normal draw, my support hand joins right about here. And then all I got to do is get this stuff out of the way, get the thumb and whatever this is called out of the way, and just transfer it right over. Okay? If you have a safety on your gun, I like to disengage the safety right out of the holster the normal way, right? You want things to be as normal as possible. And then when you come over, make sure you park that left thumb on the safety so you don't inadvertently flick the safety on during recoil. It's an easy thing to show people in the classes. This is also a 0.6. Needs to get down to a 0.6. Okay, next, number 7, I believe, is the Burkett Reload. Yep, the Burkett Reload. Named after a guy named Matt Burkett, who was probably the first guy to ever put out any real shooting instruction that I ever saw. And he recommended we practice the reloads up to the most important part. And at the time, he was the only guy I could find that was putting information out there, so I just did what he said. And all you're doing is you start with an unloaded gun on target. At the tone, unloaded empty gun on target. At the tone, you're going to hit the mag button, bring the magazine to the point of no return. So you're going to watch the magazine make contact with the mag well. You're going to see the mag well. Cannot stress this enough. Well, I don't need to see it. I get there most of the time. Well, I have never seen anybody who doesn't see the mag well have a 100% success rate with a reload. And the question you got to ask yourself is, if you're not seeing the mag well, are you happy with less than 100%? Because it will be less than 100%. Could be in the 90s, could be in the 80s, could be in the 70s, but it will not be 100. And if the index finger is high and straight, and if the angle of the gun and the magazine match each other, and you see the magazine make contact with the mag well with your finger high and straight on the magazine, okay, you cannot miss a reload. But if one of those conditions are not met, you can miss a reload. And it's my belief that those things should be done as close as possible to the firing position. Right? And if you have long arms, you want to come back a little bit more. If you're more of a T-Rex, you don't need to bring them. You don't need to come back hardly at all if you have short arms. But if I'm shooting here, right, in my normal firing position, and I'm loading the gun down by my belly button or my chest, I've got a long way to go once that magazine is in the gun to get that gun back to the firing position. But if I load the gun closer to the firing position, I can just roll right back on target. And obviously that could be taken to an extreme like everything else, but most people need to load the gun a little bit closer to the firing position. And that's something that you can play with in dry fire. Take a video of it, take a slow motion video of it, see how far away you are from your firing position. Because the reload is not the time it takes to get the mag into the gun. The reload is the time between shots. And the further you are from your firing position, the longer it's going to take you to get back on target. And this is just the tip, ladies and gentlemen, right? It's just the magazine coming to the edge of the mag well, making contact, the point of no return. You are not doing a full reload here, right? You're just bringing the magazine to the point of no return at the gun's mag well opening. You're reinforcing seeing the mag well. And a very easy thing to do is to take a paster and put it on the bottom edge of the mag well, a target paster, to give you something to look at. That's very, very useful. Ironically, that modification used to put you in open because they called it a frame modification. But they have since removed that senseless rule. I'm not sure. Some version of the rule book considered a little stripe or a paster or something to be a frame modification, and it actually got you put in open. That was kind of dumb. But again, this is not a full reload. This is gun on target, on the tone, hit your mag button, and bring your new magazine to the point of no return. And that's it. And that needs to be done in 0.6 of a second. Okay? All right. Now we get into the multiple shot drills. This starts with 6 reload 6. Now, we get to a very crucial part of this here. Your primary par time, your baseline time, is the time at which you can shoot all alphas. For most of you, that'll be 5 to 6 seconds when you're first starting out. Right, you're going to dry fire 2 shots on 3 targets, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, full reload, the whole thing, and then 2 shots on 3 targets. So 6, reload 6. When you're trying to reduce these par times, some amount of accuracy slop is inevitable and acceptable. You're telling me to practice dry firing Charlies and Deltas? That's not what I'm saying. I am not saying to intentionally dry fire Charlies and Deltas. What I am saying is, as you go from 6 seconds to 4 seconds, there will be some Charlies, maybe Deltas during that process. And again, you have a choice to make. You can stay there and mandate 100% alphas. You can for sure do that. It's going to take you a lot longer to get fast if you insist on 100% alphas and dry fire. Well, I'm just practicing sloppy shooting. Okay. You're not practicing sloppy shooting. What you're doing is you're favoring speed over accuracy for a short amount of time in training to understand what it feels like to do something quicker. Doing a 6 reload 6 in 4 seconds feels a lot different than doing it in 6 seconds. And until you know what it feels like, you will not be able to do it. And the first time you do it, the accuracy will not be pretty. You just won't. But you have a choice to make. Do you want to stay slow and shoot perfect alphas, or do you want to get faster? Now, how much of this speed mode training you can do depends on the ability you have to go to matches and leave only acceptable shots. If you're a fast, sloppy shooter, you're going to want to do more match mode dry fire, and we'll talk about that at the end. If you're a slow, accurate shooter, you need to do more speed mode. What does it feel like to do these things a little bit quicker? But regardless of what you're doing, you can always be calling your shots in dry fire. Potentially the only dumb question anybody's ever asked me is, how do I call my shots in dry fire? And I thought the guy was joking, because it is criminally easy to call your shots in dry fire. When you press the trigger, where was the dot? Where were the sights? It's a great way to practice shot calling. And the inaccuracy that you observe is a shot calling victory, not an accuracy problem, as long as you are getting faster. Okay, so 6 reload 6. I like to start with an empty gun because picking up magazines is a huge waste of time. However, if you have trouble getting the mags out of the gun, you will need to drop mags on 6 reload 6. I don't have trouble getting mags out of the gun and never have, so I don't drop mags. If you have trouble getting the mags out, or if you're one of these guys that insist on 100% realism, drop mags all you want to. Just be advised you'll spend more time picking up mags than you will doing the drill. And to me, that's not a great use of time. Okay? All right, the next one is surrender 6, reload 6. It's the exact same thing with a surrender start position. Piece of cake there. Everything, same thing applies. Next is the old Prez, turn and draw 2, 2, and 2, full reload 2, 2, and 2. When you do the turn and draw the way I recommend it, you're going to end up with your right foot forward for right foot shooters. When you do the Prez, you can adjust / normalize your stance on the reload. I did learn something very recently. I learned that without a magwell, as it is on the PDP, I had better reloads if I just kept my right foot in front and didn't bring the left foot forward. Because I was having some reload issues my first time doing Prez with the PDP, and then I deduced that because most of that was done with a magwell, the magwell allowed a little bit more slop while I was moving that left foot forward on the reload. So I just tried leaving my left foot back, and the reloads got better immediately. So without a reload, without a magwell, you may be better off leaving your right foot forward on the turn and draw. Okay? And then Prez is a phenomenal example of doing something sooner. There's probably, I think, 16 or 18 events in the Prez. and every single one of them can be done sooner. Now, when we talk about dry fire versus live fire, the only thing you don't get to keep in dry fire is the splits. So if you're dry firing the El Prez with 13 or 14 splits, you may not get to keep those. Now that doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. It just means that that's something that you're not going to get to keep. And I do not recommend artificially slowing down the splits. You can do that if you want to. That's up to you. What my thinking is, because there's no recoil and because the gun isn't moving in between shots, I can pull the trigger as fast as I want to. And what I know it does for me is it tells me I can pull the trigger as fast as I want when the visual conditions are appropriate. If I artificially slow down my trigger pull to simulate recoil, I might get it wrong, and I might build in some sort of desire to control my trigger pull separate from my vision. But because the gun's not moving, because there is no recoil, there's no limit to how fast I can pull that trigger. So that's what I do. And it greatly benefits you when the targets are closer. Right? What you're doing is you're establishing a limit of human function that is available to you when the visual conditions are appropriate. Write that down. You're establishing a limit of human function that is available to you when the visual conditions are appropriate. Have you ever seen the classifier, can you count? That is a phenomenal example of the limit of human function being available when the visual conditions are appropriate. I had this weird, I don't know if it's a fantasy. Some of you are getting nervous. Anderson's going to talk about his fantasy. It's not really a fantasy. It's more of a, I don't know what it is. But I had this idea that some people at USPSA were sitting around going, well, Anderson's got this book of 6 reload 6. Let's throw him a curveball. Let's give him 5 reload 5. And I don't know if that happened, but in my dream world, that happened. So it's very simple. Just 5 reload 5 instead of 6 reload 6. But the targets are like 6 feet away. And of all the things that we dry fire, the can you count classifier is probably the closest that live fire and dry fire will ever be. And on the subject of live fire versus dry fire, I never, with the exception of El Prez, I never went out and shot these in live fire and compared my times to dry fire. To me, it didn't seem that important. Right? To me, I'm using dry fire to build my speed. I know I'm getting faster. So I was never all that interested in the direct comparison between dry fire and live fire. Only reason I did it for El Prez was because I just wanted to see how fast I could do it. Current record, I think, is 3.57 for El Prez with 100% hits on paper. No, it's not all alphas. That's not what we're trying to do. In that environment, that's not what we're trying to do. It's just a party trick to see how fast I can go. It's just a fun thing to do. So that's El Prez. I think there's anything else that's important there. Transitions is something that you do get to keep between dry fire and live fire. So draw you get to keep, transition you get to keep, reload you get to keep. The only thing you don't get to keep, dry fire to live fire, is the splits. And that's why the further the targets are away, the greater the gap will be between live fire and dry fire. Oh, and going back to Steel Challenge, because there are no splits, you get to keep everything in Steel Challenge. And if you're serious about Steel Challenge and you do not have the Steel Challenge dry fire banners, I would question how serious you are. That is one of the greatest training tools I have ever seen. You know, life-size banners of every single stage. If I was a serious Steel Challenge shooter, I'd be living in those things. I'd be wearing them like a cape. Right? What are you wearing? I'm wearing a Steel Challenge dry fire banner cape. You wearing anything else? Nope. Oh my goodness. All right, so that covers the El Prez. That's drill number 10. The next one is probably six reload strong. Yeah, this is 2 and 2 freestyle, full reload, 2 and 2 strong, hand only. You will want to bring your left foot back during the reload, and you will want to shoot right-handed from right to left because you're stronger in that direction. All right, so after you do your first 6 shots, doesn't matter which way you do them, do your full reload, drag your left foot back on the reload, and then shoot right to left for your last 6 shots. Now, we talk about speed mode a little bit. Speed mode means accepting a little bit of slop short term to learn what it feels like to go faster, to make that speed normal. Most of you, I do not recommend speed moding the one-handed shooting. That would only be at the very upper levels would you want to do that. In the beginning, we want to shoot alphas. So you can speed mode the freestyle portion if you want to, but when you go one-handed, you've got to be shooting alphas. You've got to be, okay? And then the last one is 6 reload weak, 2, 2, and 2 freestyle, full reload, 2, 2, and 2 support hand only. Right-handed shooters, when you transfer the gun to your left hand, you'll want to shoot left to right. And be absolutely certain that you're dry firing alphas one-handed. This will get quicker over time. If you're having trouble finding the dot after the transfer, this will totally fix that. And you do want to be bringing these par times down on these last 2 drills, 6 reload strong and 6 reload weak. However, you want to avoid speed moding the one-handed shooting. And what I mean by that is when you're shooting one-handed, make sure you're dry firing alphas. This would also be another thing to remember, that you're not going to get to keep the splits. So if you're dry firing 16 splits one-handed, you're not going to get to keep those in live fire. And that's fine to do them in dry fire because the visual conditions are appropriate. Just be advised, they are not going to be there in live fire. You will not be firing 16 splits, okay, in live fire one-handed. Not if you're paying attention to what's going on, okay? So this is how to use the first 12 drills of refinement repetition to get quicker. Now, if you're interested in more match performance, we got you covered there too. All you have to do is put movement into these drills. And there's 2 ways you can do it, right? You can't, so like on the presentation drills where you're just drawing to a sight picture, do those while stepping forward. Do those while stepping backwards. Do those while stepping to the left. Do those while stepping to the right. Do those while doing a hard lean around a barricade, right? Do something to make it more match realistic. All right, when you get to the multiple shot drills, you can do those 2 ways. You can either have a period of movement in between them, so like 6 reload 6. You could shoot your first 6 from one box, do your reload, move into the other box, and shoot your second 6 from the other box. Well, that's a pretty good simulation of 3 targets over here, 3 targets over there, with a burst of speed in between. And as long as the boxes are the same distance, you can put a par time on that. How long does it take me to fire 6 shots here, move 6 feet, and fire 6 shots over there? Anything that can be duplicated in dry fire can have a par time put on it. If you've ever wondered how to get faster, figure out something you need to do faster, set it up in dry fire so it's exactly the same every time, put a par time on it, and start whittling that par time down. That is literally all you ever need to do to get faster. Literally all you ever need to do to get faster. Set something up, put a par time on it, and start chipping away at that par time. The other thing you'd want to do for match performance is do all of the drills while moving. Now, this would be a little bit more of a match mode situation. You can still use a par time, but you'll for sure want to start shooting makeups. Because if you're spraying Charlies and Deltas while you're moving, that's not a great thing to be doing. If we're going to be moving, we need to be shooting accurate shots. So the speed mode environment is a little bit different if you're going to do these things literally while you are moving. All you want to do there is just activate the makeup switch, which is really great, by the way, for a couple of reasons. Number 1, you're leaving only acceptable shots. Number 2, you're learning how fast you can move and still do that. And number 3, perhaps most importantly, you're learning to issue immediate makeup shots on paper. One of the differences between good shooters and great shooters is instant makeups on paper. If you look at a D or a C class shooters, you will never see instant makeups on paper, ever. But if you look at a master or grandmaster, you should see immediate makeups on paper. These guys aren't looking for bullet holes. They're calling those shots and they're sending makeups as soon as the gun fires, and they know the shot was not acceptable by whatever definition they use. And any kind of match mode dry fire, where you flip on the makeup switch, will teach you how to do that. Now, that's a little bit different than the match mode dry fire we talk about most of the time. We'll probably talk about that tomorrow because we don't have enough time today. But the only difference between any kind of match mode dry fire and speed mode dry fire is makeups on unacceptable shots. You can still use a par time. And that's potentially even more useful because now you're mandating acceptable shots inside the par time and including any needed makeups. So that could be very, very powerful. But that's how to use refinement repetition to get fast. Anytime you want to do anything faster, all you have to do is set it up in dry fire, put a par time on it, and go to work on the par time. tenth of a second at a time. Hey, it's taken me 6 seconds to do this thing. Doesn't matter what it is. What do I need to do to get it done in 5.9? Which of these things can I do sooner? And picking something to do sooner is a whole lot easier than trying to do the whole thing faster. Okay, now I can do this thing in 5.9 seconds. What do I got to do to get it down to 5.8? Now, accuracy may suffer short term, right? If you could do the thing in 5.5 seconds, whatever it is, if you could do it in 5 seconds with 100% acceptable hits, you'd already be doing it. So clearly that's too much for today. But if you knew what it felt like to do it in 5.5 seconds and that feeling became normal, the accuracy comes back very, very quickly. But if you're not willing to endure a short, and I mean short, amount of time of questionable accuracy, you're going to stay stuck at whatever speed you're at. And that's just all there is to it. People get stuck at a speed because as soon as they go faster, the accuracy suffers. And they say, well, that didn't work. Got to go back to going slow. That takes a long time. When they used to say it takes 10 years and 1,000,000 rounds to make master, that's the environment they were in. Incremental accuracy gains followed by complaining about speed. Incremental speed gains followed by complaining about accuracy. That'll take 10 years and 1,000,000 rounds. But if you learn what it feels like to dry fire something faster than you can currently do it, and that feeling becomes normal, super normal, and then you go to the match and you learn how to leave only acceptable shots without speeding up or slowing down, that is the secret formula. Dry fire to get FAF. Fast and furious, let's say. Shot calling for acceptable accuracy, and then, of course, understanding the mental game. So dry fire for speed, shot calling for accuracy, and then taking control of the mental game. One of the interesting conversations I had with the guy yesterday, this was the guy that had all the negative thoughts about the stage with the penalty plate. He's a very, very polite young man. When I was done explaining it to him, he said, wow, I never realized how mental this is. Oh, it starts out 30% mental. And then as your skills improve, it becomes more and more and more mental. And the question I ask them, the parents, the coaches, the shooters, if you're telling me that the mental game is 90% of the sport's 90% mental, how much of your training is mental? Nowhere near 90%. All right, so if you're shooting better in practice than you are in competition, if you're making silly mental mistakes, repeated mental errors, we can show you how to fix all of that very, very quickly. Okay? Just drop me a line, steve@andersonshooting.com, and we will get you squared away. All right, folks, hope you enjoyed this program on how to use refinement and repetition to get fast and furious. As always, if you have any questions, please let me know, steve@andersonshooting.com, and I will be happy to answer them on the program. And until we meet again, let's just do one more rundown of the classes here, since I have your attention here at the very end. October 27, 29, 17 South in Georgia. Bluegrass Sportsman's League, I think it is. Kentucky, September 24, 23 and 24. Deerfield, Massachusetts, August 4 and 5. Salem, New Jersey, 8, 9, and 10 of September. South Africa, most of August. And then Mental Management Online, July 19 through 21, 9 a.m. July 31st through August 2nd at 5 p.m. As always, you can go to andersonshooting.com, click on upcoming classes to see where we're at and what we're doing. Till we meet again, be like me, do what I do, say it with me. 1, 2, 3, get to work.